Some price for a Friday, December 13th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. And this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today, bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside Vegas Whitecaps voice of Blake Price.
Stinging shot.
Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things.
Hi, Woody.
We just had a bit of a went back in time there. Just had a bit of an audio issue on our first launch here of this show, so thank you for bearing with us. Believe everything is resolved.
Software issue that resulted in an audio issue, but yes, we won't bore you with details.
Whittingham's going to kill me for connecting his name to an audio issue.
That's true, yeah.
Our old producer. Okay. Sorry, Mitsubishi poll question as we get into what is a big win for the Vancouver Canucks, but more brilliance from Kevin Lankinen. Does Kevin Lankinen have a shot at a Vezina Trophy nomination? Blake, what says you?
I don't see it as a possibility. First thing my mind goes to is he going to play enough? Like, the numbers are certainly flirty with that level of goaltending. But with Demko back, he's got 21 starts. You need to get to around 50. Allmark has won with 49. Other nominations have come close. Maybe 47 is the lowest I can remember in terms of a nomination. But effectively, you need to get to 50 games. So then we're talking 29 to 30 more starts for Lankinen. That is getting the majority of the starts now. Down the stretch, important games, all that. No, you're going to Lankinen still. Is that going to happen here for the Vancouver Canucks with 54 games remaining? So you're looking at a 30 to 24 division of labor. That's assuming that it's only those two guys that are playing and no Artie Shilov's on a call-up. So that's asking a lot, much less to perform as he has in an even larger sample size behind this defense core, which we've talked about, that still needs some work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say no.
I voted no. It's going to be tough to get there starts-wise. First of all, Connor Hellebuck is already speaking for one of those three finalists, if not the trophy itself. But Lankinen is tied for the league in shutouts with 3. Of course, got it last night. He's tied for second in wins with 14. He's 6th in the league in save percentage and 9th in the league in goals against average. That is of goalies that have played 17 games or more. That's where we decided to draw the line here. Just a little bit past the 1/3 mark of the NHL season. That really incorporates all the starters, if you will. You can find some guys who have played very few games who on small sample sizes do better on goals against or save percentage. So I voted no as well, but I'll say this, like, the numbers right now are Vezina nomination worthy. And once again, last night, he is brilliant. And, we'll talk to Jeff later, but this is shaping up to be one of the great free agent classes in Vancouver Canucks history. At the very least, would have to do more digging in the NHL, amongst the NHL's ranks, but Lankinen, Sherwood, and Jake DeBrusk now up to 14 goals. That is a hell of a summer from Patrick Alvin. Lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option, lower monthly payments, flexibility to drive a new vehicle every few years, convenience of staying under warranty, minimal maintenance cost, plus avoiding the long-term commitment and depreciation hit of ownership. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, you can get the 2024 Outlander PHEV for $182 a week. If you want the gas option, Outlander 2024, yours for $105. The Eclipse Cross, just $100 a week, and the RVR only $87 a week. Plus, get away with $1,000 winter tire credit, no charge to your maintenance package. And don't miss out on that $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV while it lasts. See dealer for details. All leases are OAC. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey. Or online at surreymitsubishi.ca.
By the way, Matt's Vegas Whitecaps barb was due to the massive Whitecaps ownership news. We're going to get to that later on in the show.
Yeah.
We'll get to a massive
we have a
victory first.
Yeah, we have a thorough conversation on this bombshell announcement from the Whitecaps that they are up for sale. The top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. The return of JT Miller, first star in a 4-0 victory. Blake, get this. Over a good team on home ice.
They say it can be done.
A dream, buddy.
Well,
second win this year over the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers.
It's also a sweep, yeah. So, for those that say they can't be good teams, you're going to turn to the Stanley Cup champions who are on a roll too right now. They shouldn't have won last night, but they did, and they did so sort of in the manner in which they've won all of their good games this season, and that is playing with better linkage from the back, playing with way more tenacity on the forecheck. I mean, that's sort of the one missing thing of the meat and potatoes hockey that we've been seeing out of this team lately. That Rick Tocchet has dumbed it down. Usually, like a heavy forecheck is part of that, and we hadn't seen that. It's a very passive group through from their own blue line out when the other team has the puck, and when the Canucks play aggressively, they can create some turnovers and create some rushes the other way. I mean, honestly, was their shooting percentage in their favor last night? It was, because they didn't take a lot of shots last night again. But there was missed opportunities, like the JT Miller breakaway, which he kind of just chased it into the corner and nothing came of it. There were Teddy Bluger had one of those too. There were other opportunities that just didn't come to pass that could have made the Canucks win last night even more impressive. So, hey, in isolation, love the win. I'm not gonna play down what happened last night, but to feel really good about this team, you want to see this on a regular basis.
Miller with 2 assists, and he gets rousing ovations from the crowd, who still enjoy parroting along with Al Murdoch on his name on the PA. 2 assists for Teddy Bluger and Max Sasson as well. We'll get to him.
Yeah.
Goals from Susie, Heinen, Boeser, DeBrusk, and boy, Heinen really needed one. And Susie, welcome to your account in 2024-25. Let's hear from Coach Tocchet first on the night that was for JT Miller.
Arguably one of the best players in the league. He's a big part of our team. That's hard to do. Not play for a month and come in there and do what he did. What, he have a couple of points? But I thought he played him against Barkov. I don't know, he played 14, 15 minutes. It's kind of what I wanted to play him, but I thought he did a good job against Barkov. He's a big guy in the middle. It's tough to go around him.
The minutes for him and everybody was key. Kept the minutes low on JT Miller. I thought, how's he going to do that? Well, there's a way to do it. Have the depth contribute and have a multi-goal lead where you can just suppress everybody's ice time on the top 6. It was great.
Just one game, but in terms of physically, as we know, JT has been battling, whether it's neck, back, shoulder, something in the upper body there that prevented him from taking faceoffs earlier in the season.
I'm surprised somebody asked him about that prior to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you
112?
Are you 100% physically now? He clearly looks it.
112 of 20 faceoffs last night for 60%. He'll take that all day long. So didn't look any worse for wear there. Didn't look any worse for wear, in terms of skating, in terms of shooting. So, I think physically, absolutely, the rest looks like it has done him well. I do want to get back to the matter that kept him away, because, drip by drip, we're getting more information on this. I noted your tweet last night. You can't think of another situation like this in sports where a player goes away for really undefined reasons. But I do think we have.
And then doesn't clarify upon return.
No, exactly.
And generally they do.
And as you always say, and as we always say, when these sports teams and these athletes don't provide transparency, what you do is create a vacuum for which people can and will speculate. But of course, it happened after his benching against the Nashville Predators. His teammates were asked about it the next day. Liz Paterson with a interesting comment that, well, we're all going through something. Patrick Allvin then later says, we have the tools to help and support JT both at the team and the league level, and he's going to emerge as not only a better player but a better person from this. And then Elliot Friedman on his 32 Thoughts podcast, I think he, meaning Miller, has to bend and the other guys have to bend. Everybody has to bend a little bit. It's like a podcast, blah, blah, blah.
Talks about being in the workplace.
Basically. So, basically the narrative that is shaping up there is that this is anger management. We've seen this from JT in the past, slamming the stick on the back of the net to get the goaltender out and on the bench. So, with the absence of more information, what I'm starting to believe is he had a temper tantrum after the Nashville game. It didn't go over well, and everybody said, okay, we need to take a break. We need to cut this at the pass. We need a JT Miller that, is fiery and emotional on the ice, because that's the heart and soul that you need on a hockey club. But he also has to realize that he can't go too far.
That may be the manifestation ultimately. That maybe, we don't know. That may be the manifestation of what happened at work for him. But what we don't know is what has happened in his life that has led to that. So it's not, that may be an ingredient of it, but that might not be the exclusivity of the personal reasons to leave. So there could be something big in his personal life that allowed him to be on a hair trigger. And so we don't know that piece of it, which could be a very big piece and an explanatory piece of why he was not as calm, cool, as collective as we've praised him to be. Remember, the 14 months of JT Miller prior to that moment, we have praised him for his evolution as a player.
Yep, and he's talked about that pretty openly.
So if there was regression, what ultimately caused that?
Yeah,
we don't know.
Yeah, some are reading into the fact he didn't thank the organization yesterday in that 3-minute media briefing.
He
thanked his agent, his family, the guys in the room, but not the organization. Which, and this is the other thing that we've said, and particularly after reading Patrick Allvin's comments on this, and Patrick Johnston led the reporting on this, that it seemed to be as much at the organization's. It seemed to be as much the organization as JT himself that arrived on this conclusion of a break. So,
I mean, he was asked explicitly about what the organization had done for him, and he seemed to go out of his way to not mention the organization.
Yeah. So that's as good a first period as the Canucks have had, opening up that 2-0 lead. It's as good a victory as the team has had. Many are saying that's the best Canucks win of the year. It's really the first tidy, stress-free victory from the Canucks since that 4-3 win in Ottawa on November 23rd. Senators scored a couple of goals very late there, so I guess there was a minute or so of
there was a minute of franticness.
Okay, there was a minute of franticness. So you want to go back further to
Calgary.
To the Calgary game.
Yeah. It's a long time ago.
Yeah. No, for sure.
November 12th.
And,
a month.
The narrative about good teams was borne out in the record prior to this Florida victory. So let's hear from Rick Tocchet, because Coach says this reinforces the notion that the Canucks are a good team.
Great effort. Happy about it. We're even keel team. I know, we have to stay even keel. We got to enjoy it, but put it behind us. Just like when we lose a game, I think we're handling that better. So, there's adversity hit this team, and there's been, like I said, good stuff and bad stuff about that happened this year. And I like the fact that, we're seven games over 500. We're okay. We got good players here. We are a good team, and we'll find our game. And tonight's in the right direction. So that's the way I look at it.
And the ability to manage wins and not allow things to happen, like say happened in Ottawa, for instance, is the ability to keep ice time down. In that win in Ottawa, Elias Paterson plays 19 minutes in that game. Keeping ice times down, and also just even if your ice time's around your normal ice time, you're playing with that urgency. You're playing with your your elevation, your awareness at an all-time high, because you've got to make sure you get this across when you're cruising with a 3-4 goal lead in the back half of the third period, you're in cruise control. You're doing the simple plays, and your expenditure of energy and mental fatigue is way down. So it's important to have these wins every now and then where you can do that. And the ice time management was fabulous last night. It also gets guys into the rhythm a little bit more. Now, Heinen and Sasson's big moments were earlier in the game, but they get into they're going over the boards every fourth shift in a game like that, which allows them to be a little bit more like the hockey players that they are, rather than freezing to death on the bench for 12 minutes before their next shift. So all sorts of reasons why those sorts of games, the more you have of those, the better off you're going to be as a team.
Tocchet thought the defense was really sharp, and so was the goaltending. 27 saves for the third shutout. Let's hear from Kevin Lankinen and then come back and talk about that defense group.
I think every night is important. I try not to think about things, overthink. I just play when I'm asked to, and try to put my A game every night. I get the chance, and I was happy that tonight we were able to get the win, and just as a whole, a great team effort.
And that was in response to whether Thatcher Demko coming back affects the price of tea in his world. Needless to say, I think it's going to mean fewer starts going forward, but that might be a better thing because, workload was an issue. The few stumbles he had this year, coach came out and said, well, I've overplayed him. I got to find rest for him. Shilov's not holding up his end of the bargain, wasn't able to be trusted enough to get more starts, whereas Thatcher Demko, no problems there. He's going to get the cage. As for the defense, mentioned the goal by Soucy. And
what a setup by Sasson.
Mm-hmm. And should have mentioned a 2-assist night for Quinn Hughes as well when I was rattling off those guys with 2 assists. Boy, 4 guys with 2 assists. Mm-hmm. You don't see that very often. So they contributed some points. Tocchet explained yesterday on this Brandstrom matter and, why are Forbort and Friedman playing instead of Brandstrom. Tocchet explained with the way Florida rims the puck around. If the Canucks are a dump and chase team, the Panthers are a rim and chase team, that it's important to have defensemen on their forehand. So he wanted a natural righty out there playing alongside Forbort. Now, you can argue, well, why not Brandstrom over Forbort, but they're trying to get Derek Forbort better integrated into this club after having played so few games, being hurt and taking time away for the death of his father. So he went back to that, which he went back to a defense group minus Brandstrom that was dreadful against St. Louis, and they responded with a terrific all-around effort on both ends of the ice.
Friedman was good in the role that he was asked to play. He's a nice skater, and he keeps it simple and can make a decent first pass. Forbort was rusty, but he was fine. And we'll see, is Brandstrom Friedman an option for the Canucks going forward?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing that combo and seeing what that can do. But I think it's you want to play Forbort. I mean, I would go 50-50 right now. I would go every other night, Brandstrom and Forbort, and see who wins, or just see if that works on that left side.
Well, and I like that in theory. I do think, much as he explained yesterday with the way Florida plays, I do think it's going to be a little bit dependent on the opponent.
Yeah, sure.
The anticipated style of game and what he wants to be able to best exploit the opponent's weaknesses and play to the Vancouver Canucks strengths. But that brings us to Vincent Desharnais, Blake, with the reports now that the Vinny Desharnais experiment is coming to an end, that the Canucks are looking to move him, have been for some time. He's on a $2 million ticket with 2 years remaining, and boy, that second year is looking like an albatross right now, because if it was just this year, I think you're talking about a more movable player, but a team having to commit to his $2 million salary for next year suddenly changes the equation here. You can bury players in the minors, and 1.15 million of their salary will not count against your NHL cap. So I suppose that is an option for the Canucks as well, Blake. And we know how they have felt about accruing cap space this year. Itty bitty, single day demotions and promotions for some of these guys who don't require waivers just to be able to accrue some cap space. Needless to say, being able to bury 1.15 million is pretty significant, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
To those moves. What do you think? Do you pay a draft pick to get this player off your books? Do you put him into a larger deal where you recognize he's a liability and bake that into the cost of the trade, or do you just demote him? Where are you on Desharnais?
Well, you know where I am on the player. I made that loud and clear.
Like the player.
And the extra year was just such folly. But I do believe somebody will get pretty generous closer to the trade deadline, at least, if not before then, for a large gentleman that is a right shot.
Okay.
Like if you tell me a 4th round pick gets rid of everything, by all means. By all means. I don't think you regret that in the least, especially if you're getting rid of that second year. But he can't be both. Like, I'm not peeling off the 4th and holding back salary if I'm the Vancouver Canucks. I think somebody will
No.
I think somebody will get more desperate than that. Or, how about this? And I see somebody on Twitter's already put this together. This is not the Buffalo Sabre droid you're looking for, but Henry Jokiharju.
Well, I mean, that's a top 4 right shot defenseman, but okay.
$3.1 million cap hit.
What else are you giving up there? Because I would suspect it would be quite consequential.
I mean, do you think? Jokiharju's not panning out, really. Like, I don't think he's heavily regarded here at this point. And the Sabres get a big cap space themselves in that whole deal.
He's only playing 18 minutes a night this year. Only 3 points, too.
Like, he's not all that. So,
well, no.
Cost certainty for the Sabres.
Yeah. He's been better in his. Last year he played 19 minutes. Previous years in Buffalo, he's played 21 minutes, even up to 22 minutes one year. Hasn't been an offensive dynamo, but as a right shot, is young.
And he's not flimsy. He's not huge.
Yeah, no, exactly. No. I think, given that Desharnais' a liability, I think that probably costs you your 1st round pick.
Oh, God, no.
Your 1st round pick, but Desharnais is negative value.
In what sense? Like, you're giving them salary cap space with this, and you're getting.
No, but they don't want Desharnais' contract, Blake. Why would they?
Well,
he's not an asset. So no. So you're giving them a liability and asking them for their, their second pair right side defenseman at 3.1 and an RFA with a 25-year-old RFA to be with arb rights. I mean, it's costing you something of consequence.
But I'm not a 1st round pick. For Jokiharju? No. He's not that regarded. Are you kidding me? The 1st round pick.
He's their 4th most used defenseman, so he's playing in their top 4 there. And you can point out his warts, yeah.
Carson Soucy's not getting your 1st round pick. He plays in the top 4.
No, but he's not a 25-year-old right shot, 1-time 1st round pick. Anyways, okay, we'll agree to disagree, yeah. But I'm sure Buffalo would position it as, well, okay, this guy hasn't had a great first third of the season, but he's been an important player on our team in the past. And right shot defensemen don't grow on trees, let alone younger ones, with size and some pedigrees. Anyways.
Others have mentioned Cody Ceci in the past. You'd probably.
Well, Ceci is a lower,
Lower what?
I think Ceci is a lower cost of acquisition than Jokiharju. He's in San Jose.
He's bigger cap hit. I think he's an easier cost of acquisition.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think it's going to cost you all that much to bring on Ceci if you believe in Cody Ceci. Buffalo, you're asking them to give up a club-controlled player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get to Brock Boeser. We'll agree to disagree.
Well, you're making it sound like I'm going to the wall for Jokiharju. I'm just saying I don't think it's that big an acquisition.
No, I'm just saying if you want Jokiharju and you want to get rid of Vincent Desharnais, those are two things that are not very appealing to Buffalo. So you're going to have to make it worth their while. Especially in
cap space.
Especially in this. Well, the cap space this year is 1.1, and they're on the hook for $2 million next year with Desharnais, which they don't want. So no, there's not even a cap space benefit to the Sabres outside of minimally this year for a team that isn't looking to load up and be a playoff team. I mean, it may well be that Buffalo is at such a crossroads and is so desperate to change the mix on a young team that is just not launching that you can get one of their young players. I know Dylan Cousins has been talked about a bit here. It was a $7 million guy going for that you might be able to pry one of the younger pieces from Buffalo at less of a trade cost than you would have prior to the season, prior to this terrible start from the Sabres. But I mean, I still don't think Kevin Adams and company are just going to be out there giving away young players, let alone committing to bad players with term on their contract. Let's get to Boeser. He scores in his 500th game.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a flair for the dramatic, right? He's got the movie star. You knew Brock was scoring in his 500th game.
Needed some puck luck to make it happen.
Hey, they all count. Here's Boeser on playing in and scoring in that 500th game.
A lot. I mean, it's very grateful. It's a great league to play in, and to do it in one city, it means a lot to me. I love this place, so I had a fun day.
Nice to celebrate with a goal.
Yeah, of course. Anytime you can score, it's always nice.
Want to walk us through that one? It looked like you kind of got your own rebound off the inboards there.
Yeah, I think that was just a lucky bounce. JT made a heck of a play there. Right when he came in the zone, and I knew he was going to pass it, so shot it. I think it hit the back of the net and popped to me, so I'll definitely take it.
He's always been a fun conversation. Quieter, but there's great charisma there with Brock. You can tell he loves talking about the game. You can tell he loves being loved here in this market. And for a young man who has gone through so much on the family side that the Boesers have, it's heartwarming to hear the appreciation he has for this market and these fans here, because we've watched him grow up, right? Straight out of University of North Dakota, scoring that first game. It was an instant chemistry between Brock Boeser, the province of British Columbia, and Canucks fans. He also, using the line "pretty loyal guy," you also start to hear some messaging here, I think, from Brock Boeser about contract extensions.
I don't think it's cynical, but it's purposeful, I think.
It's absolutely purposeful. I think Brock Boeser wants to re-sign with the Vancouver Canucks first and foremost, full stop.
Yeah.
I think a lot of NHL guys say that and don't necessarily mean it. When Brock Boeser says it, I believe it 1,000%. I don't dispute that there would be other attractive markets for Brock, including going home to his home state of Minnesota, where he's beloved. But I do think if the Vancouver Canucks put an offer in front of Brock Boeser that he thinks is fair, I think he'd sign it in a heartbeat. And that is something that we're looking at between now and the NHL trade deadline in early March. The Canucks have to make a decision here. Alvina set that as a soft deadline. And so, are you going to be able to get together on a deal with Boeser between now and then?
I think he recognizes that his skill set works here. They understand what he is not. You get acquired by a new team, and all of a sudden they're wondering why you're not flying down the wing and rifling pucks from the top of the circle.
Correct.
Because that's not how I play. It would be his thought. They know how I think that was his way of saying, guys, let's be real about this. Let's be fair about this. I want to be here. You're going to get a loyal soldier happy to be here. What does that cost here?
Yep. And as we discussed earlier in the week, like, there are fair deals for both sides that I'm not sure I would sign right now if I'm Patrick Allvin, because I want to see the next few months, because I want to make sure that he's healthy. I can understand why they've waited. I think that was strategically the right move. If it does happen to cost them a little bit more money because Boeser has a extraordinary first 50 games, 60 games this year, so be it. He's earned it. He has been a loyal organizational soldier, a good player. He's got a couple of centermen here that he works with, obviously with Miller, and good friends with Paterson. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of things pointing here to a Brock Boeser extension with the Vancouver Canucks. Going to be quite interested to see where they go, because this conversation will heat up and they're going to push for something.
And again,
closer to the deadline.
I don't think people should be scared by the number 8. I really don't.
No, I think
he makes almost 6.6
now, and the cap is going up. And as you've been saying for some time here now, Blake, the last year or so, as we've started to see significant cap increases for the first time in nearly a half decade, that you do have to recalibrate your understanding of what an $8 million player is. An $8 million player 5-6 years ago, and particularly through the flat cap era, that was $8 million.
Elite.
Yeah,
that's Sidney Crosby's cap.
Exactly, like $8 million on a go forward basis with where the cap is going. That's not the elite player anymore.
That's a very nice
the next
player.
level.
Yeah.
That's the next level. There, that's the all-star player. Brock Boeser was an all-star last year, and frankly, he's a smart hockey player too. As we know, he's not the fleetest of foot, but he does a pretty good job with details most of the time, and I think that jives with Tocchet as well. And the other thing, Blake, is perhaps with a few exceptions, I think Rick Tocchet is going to be a big drawing card for free agents, both internal and external.
You don't think Vancouver Canucks fans are going to have to bring inflatable palm trees to attract people like they are in Buffalo?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
You missed that story?
Inflatable palm trees?
Kevin Adams gave a press conference 5 days ago where he said, and let's face it, nobody wants to play in Buffalo. We don't have palm trees. We have state taxes. And so everybody since then has been wearing Hawaiian shirts and bringing inflatable palm trees into the arena.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Did he really say that about his market? Wow. Okay. Let's move on to Max Sasson, another American player, another college guy, and a college free agent signing. And boy, is this looking like a good one. And a lot of credit here to Chris Higgins. He was on that file with those college free agents a couple years back when Sasson got here. 2 assists on the night. He's contributed points this year, not just a bottom 6, get off the ice, eat some minutes and play neutral with your opposition. He's been more than that. Let's hear from the young man, because he says another one of the 2 assist guys last night, Teddy Bluger, has been a massive help as he's begun his NHL career.
Thought my first couple games I was probably living off the adrenaline, and then you get into game 4 or 5, and then as I started, I think that Tampa game, I really felt like I could start hanging on to pucks, and I didn't have to be so panicky. And I definitely think every game that grows, I get more comfortable on the ice and being around here.
Love that comment about hanging on to pucks, because I was gonna say it. I hadn't heard this clip yet. I was gonna say it if he didn't, and it is the number one thing to look for a player that is on a bubble of whatever that bubble is, as to whether or not they're going to be able to get over that bubble and onto the other side.
Yep.
And guys like Nils Hoglander never had the confidence, never had maybe the skill as well to hold on to a puck and make a play. But something clicked pretty damn early with Max Sasson, because I remember we talked about this, 5 games ago maybe, of he's showing some speed and poise. Was it the Ottawa game where he got an assist? And we said, he skated like he knew what he wanted to do there with a little bit of chest out. And boy, was it there in spades last night, where he was like, I belong here. I'm going to make a play here. And he made a play to Carson Soucy and a bunch of other ones too.
He was better than a point per game player in his last year in the USHL. He was better than a point per game player in his last year at Western Michigan. He was 42 points in 56 games for the Abbotsford Canucks last season. So there are some offensive chops here. The guy can also play the middle. And let's everybody remember, he's an older guy at 24 years old, right? We've done some talking this year about 20-year-olds down at Abbotsford and how they're tracking. This kid's a little older, so it needed to happen sooner for him. And sure enough, here he is. And when Blake talks about hanging on pucks, I look at it in both sides of that equation. He has the confidence that he's comfortable with the puck on his stick offensively, and Tocchet, he's willing to eat pucks on the boards, right? Tocchet talks about that all the time.
He can
hold pucks up, take a hit, eat a puck.
Yeah.
In terms of maintaining possession, allowing a change, all the different things that can happen for you when you've got a guy who's willing to just sit there on the boards and fight for that puck and keep that puck stationary in the offensive zone.
But it's funny also how he's fast too, which allows you to atone for errors as well. And it's funny how speed reveals itself, right? Like you don't watch a guy like Max Sasson skate and he doesn't appear like Mason Raymond or Pavel Bure or who's the speed demon Matthew Lombardi in Calgary back in the day. Those guys just hit
Brad
the ice.
Hennigan, the way Brad skated on defense, just marvelous.
Some guys hit the ice, you're like, wow, that guy's fast. And other guys, you don't notice he's fast until gameplay starts. And you're like, wow, did he close the gap there? Wow, did he speed away? And Sasson's got that sneaky speed, and that's going to be a huge quiver or huge arrow in his quiver going forward.
First time I saw Hennigan skate live, I was like, that is just beautiful. A big guy like that makes that activity look so aesthetically pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
He could damn well be a figure skater. And then he married one. Okay.
Skinner is a figure skater in Edmonton.
Jeff Skinner. Yeah.
Skinner.
No, he was a competitive figure skater in Ontario alongside his hockey career. So here's the question on Sasson. Do you think he has made Nils Hoglander expendable? They both played about 13 minutes last night. I know you want to see more of it, but is there a world here where Rick Tocchet and the Vancouver Canucks say, this kid is a full-time NHLer? We like what he brings better than Nils Hoglander. It is time to move Nils Hoglander in a trade. Can he accelerate Nils Hoglander's departure from the organization via trade if he keeps this up?
I mean, that's a roll of the dice that this particular management group might be able to risk at this point.
Coach isn't kosher with Hoglander, right?
Yeah,
that's hasn't worked out to date. It would be an awfully big surprise if that script is flipped between now and the trade deadline.
I mean,
could happen. Hoglander had a terrific surge there last season that made him invaluable. I'm not discounting that. That is a very viable possibility. But what's a greater probability is that Nils Hoglander continues to make mistakes away from the puck defensive side that is not going to allow him to be everything he could be as an offensive player by this coach.
I think a spell of 3 good games, will get Nils Hoglander into the top 6. I don't think that will happen for Max Sasson.
No, different profile of player, to be sure.
Yeah. But in terms of just the spot in the top 12 forwards,
that's what I mean.
Yes,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big goal for Dan Heinen. Because more things need to happen for Danton Heinen.
Well, it's a big goal because it relieves some weight, but it wasn't exactly a he shoots, he scores kind of goal.
No,
and I'm not going to diminish it entirely, but I'm saying I hope that what that does is that leads to a bigger presence.
Not only that, but I'm saying that in concert with Tocchet saying that was one of Heinen's best games of the year.
Yes.
So a lot of praise from the head coach for a local guy here, a come home story, which, hey, we all love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I started to see fans this week, and rightfully so, asking, hey, what does this guy actually do out there? Or is there any bottom line coming? So that was a big game for Heinen. And as for Sasson, I mean, you tell me, has he already passed Ratu, Baines, and Lekramaki in terms of organizational depth there? Lekkerimäki may be a different matter because you pretty much have to play them in the top 6, so they might be a little too apples to eggs to make that comparison and say he's bypassed. But, I think what we're seeing here is Max Sasson inching his way up the power rankings ahead of Ratu and certainly Baines at this stage of the season.
Sasson is still, he's almost 2.5 years older than Ratu even. In those years matter more at the start. The difference between a 27-year-old and a 29-year-old later, less matters, but those are development years. Like, I want to see where Sasson's 24. Ratu just turned 22 a few weeks ago. Let's see what Ratu looks like in 2 years. In the moment, has he taken a roster spot from him? Yes, clearly he has. But in terms of what the player's ultimately going to be, no, I'm going to bet on Ratu.
Jake DeBrusk has the most goals of any unrestricted free agent from this summer. And he didn't score his first of the season until November 2nd.
Crazy. What a waste of 10 games. Come on, Jake.
It's stunning. As Dave Hall points out from Canucks Army, list of top goal scorers since November 2nd across the National Hockey League. Jake DeBrusk, 14. Mikko Rantanen, 14. Leon Draisaitl, who now leads the NHL in goals, 12. It's pretty good company, Jake. That was a hell of a month of November, and it's continuing into December here. We knew he was streaky. It's a little extreme to go goalless throughout a full month. But boy, where would they be, especially with Miller out of lineup, especially with Roenick out of lineup, especially when Boeser was missing those games with a concussion? Where would they be without Jake DeBrusk and the contribution he's making? Of course, he was one of the younger free agents. And Blake, I'm just going to go ahead and say it because I said this going into free agency last year. I was much more bullish on Jake DeBrusk than I was Jake Guentzel. I understand why they liked Guentzel. I understand why they pursued Guentzel last year at the trade deadline. And I can understand why they were readying the Brinks truck for Jake Guentzel before his rights were traded and he wound up signing in Tampa. That was a very fortunate move, I think, as it turns out, for the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, Jake Guentzel's been
great,
great,
call it
too.
Serendipity, but you got to be lucky at some points, too.
Jake Guentzel's been great,
but
Blake, the cap hit difference is different.
Cap hit and older player.
Yeah, for sure. Now, here's what I want to say about the streakiness, though. So he scores in 3 straight games to open his account, November 2nd, 5th, and 7th. Then he goes 6 games without a goal. And then you're thinking, no, he's the streaky player that we all thought of. Since then, he's played, 10 games, 12 games, 2 games without a goal since then. Once you're reaching double-digit games, I don't think it's a hot streak anymore. Like, you've just turned your season around at that point. I think of 3 goals in 3 straight games and then going 6 without, that's streaky. What he's doing now, that's just a good pace. So, I'll give him a little more leash now on the streaky label because this is an extended period of time of him scoring goals.
All right, let's get into today's menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games. Your steps from the stadium in the arena. They have the awesome arcade that encircles the bar. Check out the street food menu. We're going to have some Canucks Army viewing parties there coming up in January, if I'm not mistaken, next month. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar, the place to be. Let the games begin. We will speak to J-Pat here in a moment on everything last night, pointing forward on Lankinen, on Desharnais, on Miller. And we'll speak to Jeff Merrick. And Jeff with some pretty good comments on JT Miller and what he thinks is at play. And, we asked Jeff straight up, do you consider this team a cup contender? Like, where are you in terms of their upside potential now that JT Miller and Thatcher Demko are back in the lineup? And then, as mentioned by Blake earlier, we have got to talk about Vancouver Whitecaps FC, and we do. Caps fans later in the program, full discussion on what led to this day with the team being announced as for sale, and our best guess at what's to come here. I wish I could say a local, well-heeled owner with a passion for soccer and a passion for this community was going to come riding in here on a white night for the Whitecaps. But that's going to be
that's going to be the priority in this sale.
Sure, it's the priority, but that's a tough get, man.
And there's
ask.
even some reports that the current ownership is saying we're not going to talk to you unless it's contingent upon not relocating.
And
those are really easy words to say early on in the process.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because no owner is going to buy the team without portability. They may agree to keep it in market for a number of years, but at some point, if you're closing a transaction of this size, and it could be up to a $500 million, you're not going to get hemmed in like that.
No.
Whereby you give up all the leverage to BC Place or any other stadium operator. Sports franchises are valuable because of their portability. This is one of the reasons why CFL franchises, when they do sell, do not sell for an awful lot of money, because you can't just pick them up and move them somewhere else. There are no other markets. Okay, Bet365 Bet of the Daytime. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I won last night.
Did you?
Well, Boeser as an anytime goal scorer, plus 240. Cha-ching. Told you he was better value than usual, too. And Miller's coming back. 500th game, flair for the dramatic. So this is less a bet I feel confident about. More a betting situation I think you need to be aware of. Blake started this trend last week, so I'm going to pick up on it. The Indianapolis Colts are plus 20 to make the playoffs. They play in Denver this weekend. If you like the Colts to beat the Broncos, don't just bet them to win the game. Bet them to make the playoffs. And I say that because if the Colts win this weekend in Denver, their remaining schedule is Tennessee, at the New York Giants, and Jacksonville. Denver's remaining schedule, at the Chargers, at Cincinnati, home to Kansas City. We've had some fun with these playoff probabilities with the Seahawks, and we'll get to that later in the show. Check this out. If Indianapolis wins this weekend, playoff probability 68%. If they lose, 10%. They would still be a game back of Denver, but with that favorable a schedule and Denver likely to have a loss or two, they would hold the tiebreaker. They also hold the tiebreaker over Miami because they beat them head-to-head earlier this week. So the Colts, coming off the bye, 4-point underdog. If you like them to win the game in Denver, don't just bet them plus 170 to win. Bet them plus 220 to make the playoffs.
I also won last night just by betting on the team. Plus 150, I believe, was what the number was to beat the Florida Panthers last night before the news of JT Miller's return had sort of reached a fevered pitch. I'll turn my attention to the Seahawks game, and I'm taking a swing here. But he's on a heater. Talked about Brock Boeser being, or Jake DeBrusk being.
We're talking Geno here?
We're talking Geno.
Mm-hmm.
It's big, but it's not crazy. 3 touchdown passes. And it's at home. Not snowy Green Bay. And the number is just huge. It's plus 400 for 3 passing touchdowns for Geno Smith. At plus 400,
that is 3 passing touchdowns.
I know,
but
that's a big, big number.
Mm-hmm. What's the forecast this weekend?
It's wet.
You don't say. Mm-hmm. Seattle in mid-December, wet. All right, buddy. Seahawks are 2.5-point dogs at home here. You see that too?
I might be willing to take the points there.
Yeah, open and count with, get it up to 3.
Yeah.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account.
We never talked Yellow Dog earlier for the
did we miss
top
Yellow Dog?
story? So
My
we should just
God.
remind people the Yellow Dog 2.0. Yellow Dog Brewing Penticton is now open. Go get the beers you know and love. Stay for the unbelievable cuisine and handcrafted cocktails too if you want to change things up later in the night. It's open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. in Penticton. So yes, still in Port Moody, also in Penticton for the love of dogs community and great beer.
J-Pat coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
It's Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center welcoming in Jeff Paterson, host of Rinkwide Vancouver, our Canucks reporter. Jeff, best win of the season?
Yeah, I think so. When you consider the level of opponent, the way that they were playing, Florida came in 6-0-1 in its last 7. So it wasn't like the Panthers came limping into Vancouver on a West Coast road trip. They were humming along, and Canucks obviously shut them down and ultimately shut them out. Loved the start to the game. That's been such a talking point all season. They got the early lead, and then they built on it. How many times have I talked to you guys about one of the downfalls of this group this year is this inability to extend leads. Well, they got it to 2-0 and then 3-0, and hey, why not? Jake DeBrusk has to get a goal just about every game now, it feels like. So I had to get his before they were through. And yeah, I mean, I like the way that it was the depth of the lineup that set the tone. And a lot of talk around Danton Heinen these days of what does he exactly do around here. So it was nice to see him rewarded going to the net. Carson Soucy, I think, has played his best hockey in the last week to 10 days. So, not on the backs necessarily of JT Miller returning to the lineup or any of the stars, in fact, and kind of one of the low-key takeaways from the night was the fact that Quinn wasn't even the highest ice time defenseman. When you have a lead and you can roll all 4 lines and 6 defensemen, for a guy that's been playing half the game here for the last couple of weeks, for him to finish the night at 22, like that's a victory on top of the victory itself.
We've talked about the schedule right now, how it's not crazy, but it's every other night. Like it's steady crazy. And to have a night like that where, everybody shares the load, where the fourth liners are playing the same as Elias Pettersson, I mean, it's not a night off, but it certainly helps to take away from the night in, night out grind that they've got right now in the month of December.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I think that's about as spread as we've seen, because it wasn't that long ago that Hoglander was at 6 minutes in Buffalo. There have been others. Rick Tocchet shown a reluctance to use his fourth line, mostly when he shortens the bench. But part of that's because they chase so many games, particularly at home as well. So, yeah, I just think it checked off so many boxes from getting JT Miller back to Kevin Lankinen. If that's your response to Thatcher Demko returning to the lineup, this is going to be fascinating to watch how this ultimately unfolds for the Vancouver Canucks. But guys, the Canucks have 15 wins on the season, and Lankinen has 14 of them. Like it's just any way you come at the Kevin Lankinen story, it is truly remarkable. And for him to have his 3rd shutout, that's a career high already before Christmas. Something about those Eastern teams, shutouts against Philadelphia, Boston, and now the Florida Panthers. So. Another night where he was in full control. The rebound control is remarkable. That's one of his real strengths, and had to make a couple of saves. You're going to have to. It's the National Hockey League, but I didn't think there were a ton of standing on his head. Like Thatcher Demko made better saves the other night against the St. Louis Blues. Lankinen had help in front of him, and ultimately as the last line of defense, he was there when they needed him. So full credit to him. He's been a ton of fun to watch, and man, has he been good for this hockey club.
Do you think he has a chance at a Vezina nomination? It's our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today, Jeff.
I know, and I guess your question begs more questions, because if he does, what does that mean for Thatcher Demko? How does he arrive as a Vezina candidate? Based on what we've seen here through the first 2 months of the season, yes, like he is in lockstep with the guys that are going to be there at the end of the season. So on this sample size, at the very least, Yes, but it is a long year. And we saw Casey DeSmith had a really good run before Christmas, and then his play fell off. This is a different situation, obviously, and a different goaltender. And I do think that Lankinen ultimately is a little more pedigreed than Casey DeSmith, who's been at this for a while, but I think understands his role, that he's just a really good backup. Lankinen wants to be a starter and has shown an ability to carry the load here in the absence of Thatcher Demko. But now that Demko's back, we'll see how this works. I'm really curious with the week ahead. You've got Colorado, you've got a game in Vegas. Like, those are marquee matchups. And I think we'll get a pretty good read on the coaching staff, what they're thinking, who they feel is up to the challenge here to face those sorts of opponents. I kind of was in the camp of, hey, just alternate between now and Christmas. Blake, you said it's busy, but just the one set of back-to-backs here. I think they could have gone at it that way. And then Lankinen gets in there and throws a shutout, and conventional hockey wisdom is you let the guy run with a shutout. I do wonder if they come back with him against Boston, or the Bruins can't score. They've been absolutely pumped here in the first two games of their road trip. It kind of feels like another sort of soft launch for Thatcher Demko. I kind of feel like I'd go with Demko against the Bruins and save Lankinen for Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar and the Colorado Avalanche on Monday.
To the age-old question, who gives you the better chance to win tomorrow? God, I think it's Lankinen. Jeff, Lankinen, Kiefer Sherwood, and it's only a couple of weeks since we've been singing Kiefer Sherwood's praises, who continues to do good work. Don't get me wrong; it's just he's not top of the discussion around the team right now. And DeBrusk with 14 goals, which is tied for 17th in the league and the most amongst any UFA signing. Like, is this the greatest free agent class in Vancouver Canucks history? Like, you've been covering the team 25 years here. Can you think back at a summer where they added this degree of contributor in one free agent class?
Not off the top of my head. So, yeah, I mean, when you think back of some of the high-priced free agents that they brought in, I mean, I've been at this long enough to remember Mark Messier. I wasn't here when they signed him, but my first year covering the Canucks full-time was his final year. Obviously, that one didn't quite go the way that he or the hockey club had hoped. But then, you look at some of the other pieces. Radim Verbato obviously was terrific in his first year as a Vancouver Canuck. Willie Mitchell, there was a splash there. But in terms of impact and, not just one guy. Like, I'm picking one guy off the top of my head for various years here. But to have this sort of contribution from a number of guys. And, Matt, you rattled off a number of the things. Like, I was surprised. Like, DeBrusk's been scoring in bunches here. He sort of feels unstoppable. We've heard about the streaky thing, but after the game last night when I looked, and since November 1st, he leads the National Hockey League. He's tied with Mikko Rantanen since November 1st in goals scored. Like, that's pretty remarkable company to keep, and it tells you about the run that he's on. He went those first 9 games of the season without a goal, and so all 14 of his have come in the last 19 hockey games. We wondered about when would he score at home, and now it's like, will he ever stop scoring at home? He has arrived, and so many of his goals coming right around the net in the blue paint, and, that's repeatable. He's not going to get every bounce. It kind of feels like everything that wasn't going for him early is going for him right now, but my goodness, is he on a hot streak? And that's the other thing, 14 goals now in 2018 games. Like, that's a goal every other game. I don't know about you guys, but I think 25 to 30 was sort of the ballpark that we expected for a high-priced free agent coming in, getting an opportunity probably to play with Elias Paterson, probably to get some power play looks. And here he is with 14 goals through 28 games. Dare we think of him as a 40-goal scorer? I mean, that's probably getting ahead of ourselves, but he certainly has set himself up to take a good run at 30 in his first year as a Vancouver Canuck.
And that is his goal, as stated at the beginning of the year.
The depth players could have used a little punch, as you talked about, with Heinen and Sasson jumping. Do you think any of that's sustainable? Because the team gets a lot better, even with his defensive deficiencies, if there is contributions from up and down the lineup. And that's what I think that they were going for when they bolstered the winger depth in the offseason. How many of these guys do you think can? They don't have to go on DeBrusk runs, but do you think they can start to dabble a little bit more here?
Well, it is remarkable what the return of one player at the top of the pyramid in JT Miller does in the trickle-down effect, and everybody just looked properly slotted. Now, Nils Hoglander got a great opportunity. The energy was there. At some point, he's going to have to do something with chances to play with JT Miller and Brock Boeser, and the goal streaks up to 23. So, it was a great win for the Canucks. I don't want to pick at some of the guys that didn't perform, but it's going to be curious to see if Hoglander can make the most of that opportunity. But otherwise, we've seen Sherwood play with Paterson and DeBrusk, and in short runs out on that road trip, that line had a bunch of success. Garland and Joshua, they want to keep those two guys and hope that they can build the chemistry. And now with Pius Suter back there in the middle, that's an intriguing third line. And we know what they can do when they're on their game. And I just don't know that Joshua's there yet, but it was nice to see him score the other night at the very least. And then you had a fourth line, like Teddy Bluger is back where he probably should be on a depth chart when you're slotting guys. Fourth line center who can give you some really solid penalty killing utility as well. Smart player, low maintenance. And where Ratu's been trying hard, and look, Ratu's 22. Like, there's lots of room to grow here still in his game. And, that was the first time that he came out of the lineup since early November. So he'd had a nice run of games, but he doesn't have to be an everyday player for the Vancouver Canucks. And the decision then to sit Ratu and allow Sasson to stay in the lineup. And he looked confident last night. The wheels are certainly there. It's pretty clear that the coach likes what he has seen from Max Sasson, and 4 points in 9 games for a guy that truly been injected as a depth guy and moved from the middle to the wing or the wing to the middle. Just a likable personality, obviously. We saw the big reaction from the family. So lots of good going on for Max Sasson, who talked after the game about, that he feels he belongs here now. And I think based on his performance, it's hard to disagree. Like, he looks like one of the 12 best forwards that the Vancouver Canucks have at their disposal right now.
He doesn't even look like a plugger. Like, he's not a good plugger. Like, there's confident skating there. There's speed. There's strength. Like, again, don't want to overblow it one night, but we've talked about this before, about his skating and his poise and confidence. It's just, it came together, and he made it look easy in the first period, Jeff. Like, it was kind of strange.
Well, I think you see the guys that have the ability to scoot around the ice. Like, it's such a benefit, right? Like, if you can push the pace at this level, and then the league gets faster on a daily basis. So when you can step in and you don't look out of place with your skating, then it allows you to do other things. And we saw it in his debut in Ottawa there, where he down the wing peels off, create a little space, and found the trailer who was Bluger, and Bluger scored there. So an assist in his NHL debut. He picked up an assist in, it was his second game, I guess it was, because he sat out the Boston game on the Ratu goal. You're not looking for a ton of production, but you do want shifts spent in the offensive zone. You want your fourth line guys to wear down opponents and not have to defend. And that's happened a little too much with whatever iterations they've had of their fourth line. But Sasson moved so quickly, and man, he was into it last night, and heads up play to get the puck onto the stick of Carson Soucy. And then I love the pass to Danton Heinen. And if you're not scoring the way Heinen hasn't been here, and I think the same thing applies for Dakota Joshua the other night, sort of textbook 101, like, go to the net, stick on the ice, and hope that the puck arrives there as well. And both of those guys have been rewarded with goals, and you just hope that alleviates some of whatever pressure they've been feeling to contribute. But that was really through the lineup last night. Fourth line, bottom pair defenders, whatever the case, everybody was pulling on the rope in the right direction.
Miller, a hell of a night and a hell of a reception from the fans at Rogers Arena. We're learning more and more in drips and drabs about his absence. Elliot Friedman saying he's got to bend to the room and the room's got to bend to them. What did you make of that comment, Jeff, and synthesize the JT Miller return game for us?
Yeah, I think the comment just sort of backs up this idea that maybe JT pushes it a little too far at times in that locker room, and it is ultimately a team game. And we all know what his role is and how good he could be for the hockey club. But if there were things happening behind closed doors that they felt he just had to bring it back a little bit, bending is, I suppose, one of the terms you want to use, whatever the case. He didn't want to get into it yesterday when we met with him. That's fine. He laid down the ground rules, and it was 3 minutes of relatively tame and mostly hockey questions. So, he didn't pull us behind the curtain then, and I don't know if he ever will. I don't think that JT Miller's likely to be an open book to draw us around for story time with JT to, tell us exactly what went on for the 10 games that he was away. But for him to jump back into the lineup, guys, and contribute, we talked about the fact that Tocchet was able to sort of put governors on him and Quinn Hughes, and but still 2 assists. Like, if he came back and it was 3 games without a point and he's starting to wonder, like, where's my game? Does that frustrate him in any way? I think it was a terrific reintroduction to the lineup. Was there any world in which Rick Tocchet wasn't going to put him in the opening face-off to get the Al Murdoch introduction? And sure, the Panthers fill out their lineup and it's Barkov, so that was the matchup they were looking for early, but that one felt like the surest bet around, that Al Murdoch would really be the guy that welcomed JT back. I will say, and you guys probably saw some of the video as well, I think a lot of people noticed this on Tuesday against St. Louis. We've seen it for a lot of the home games. They haven't been very good at home. I don't know what that does in terms of walk-up and last-minute ticket sales, but the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup champs, with a West Van guy in Sam Reinhart, make their one and only visit to Vancouver, and boy, at puck drop, it was like 50% capacity in there. So the people that were in their seats, yeah, they gave JT a throaty welcome back, but we're seeing this on a nightly basis again, and it just sort of feels like they've reached a threshold where tickets are... Does it
fill up later though, Jeff? Like, puck drop is a principally bad time to judge attendance. Like, we were always told, wait till late first period, even second period.
It does fill up back. Yes, it fills in. I don't know that it fully fills up. And if I'm not mistaken, they've come like close. I think they announced they were a couple hundred short of a sellout last night. But I think they've had one official sellout this season.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I mean, you go into Ticketmaster and you can see the resale tickets and the indigenous tickets, and there's still unsold real tickets every single night.
It's almost like they priced them a little too rich for the market coming off their first playoff appearance in 9 years.
I think this will be a big test. Boston on a Saturday, and I know that the Bruins aren't what they once were, and maybe the rivalry isn't, but into the holiday season, Boston on a Saturday night, followed by Colorado. Like, if you want star power and you're thinking of guys that are going to be worth the price of admission, Makar, Rantanen, McKinnon, obviously, and the Hughes-Makar match. Like, there's a lot in that. Mm-hmm. It's a Monday night, but I am curious to see, can they absolutely fill Rogers Arena for these next couple of home games to close out the homestand?
Vincent Desharnais is on the block, Jeff. Is there any salvaging this, and are they going to have to pay someone to take this contract off their hands?
Yeah, I get that the Canucks are looking, that it hasn't been a fit, and we've seen this with a number of players, most recently Daniel Sprong, but the list is getting a little bit longer here as we go with players that they make their decision and they move off them. And I think at some point that is admirable to try to cut your losses, but it also, for all the praise that this management group is getting about pro scouting and player identification, there have been a few swings and misses, and I guess that's going to happen as well. Desharnais is, and he's only been here a short while, but he truly is one of the most engaging fellows that I have been around. When I talked about story time with JT, I think Vincent Desharnais would love to have that as a feature. He would probably sit and just regale you with stories. Talked at training camp about how his dad drove trucks or drives trucks for a living, and his dad said, like, you have been blessed with an opportunity here, make the most of it. And so he's never lost sight of the fact that he's in the NHL, even when he's not playing. He was one that said there's no bad days in the National Hockey League, but there have been some bad nights in the National Hockey League when he's been on the ice. And I think this management group and the coaching staff thought that they waved the magic wand with Tyler Myers last season and they could just do it again, basically a repeat of a 6'7" giant on the right side, and it's turned into way more of a project. And so now that you've got Forbort back, and man, I don't know about you guys, I get really strong Alex Biega vibes from Mark Friedman. Slightly different players, but undersized right side defensemen that can get around the ice, play bigger than they are, not afraid to engage, and just the ultimate teammate that understands. Like, Biega was the ultimate depth guy. Like, he totally got it. Harvard educated, but he got it. That he wasn't going to be an every night player, but boy, when they tapped him, he had to be prepared and ready to go. And I give Friedman a lot of credit here. Like, it can't be a ton of fun to just sit and watch and practice, but not get to play. And so he stepped in, and it feels like a bunch of these guys have edged in front of Vincent Desharnais on the depth chart. And as much as they love their size, at some point, the name of the game is getting out of your own end and moving the puck up ice. And there aren't a lot of puck skills with Desharnais, and maybe they're seeing that this is turning into more of a project than they had imagined. Whatever the case, I'm not surprised that it's come to this. And ultimately, we'll see. But to your question about will they have to pay this year and next at $2 million, like, I can't imagine there are a ton of teams knocking on their door to get their hands on Vincent Desharnais, so they can shop him all they want. But ultimately, how do you consummate that deal?
Yeah, and it may not be just have to pair him with a draft pick to give him away. You may have to put him in a larger deal where he's baked in as a liability.
I find it hard to believe that he's not tradable closer to the deadline with playoffs lingering, that somebody's not going to get intrigued by a massive dude for the playoffs.
Massive right shot, too.
Incidentally, on Friedman, I was talking to Corey at Canucks Army the other night, and he gets out to Abbotsford Canuck games. He says he's amongst the best defensemen on the ice when he plays for the Abbotsford Canucks. Like, he's not going to be a slick player like Quinn Hughes, even at the AHL level, but it's very clear that he is at worst a quad A player.
Yeah.
If not, a great number 7 guy to have in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate tweener, and probably a tweener who leans towards the National Hockey League as opposed to the American Hockey League. And you heard Rick Tocchet talk about his preference for lefties and righties, and we've seen that together. And, Forbort back after 6 weeks away, I thought was fine. 19 minutes for Derek Forbort, some penalty-killing utility there. But I need to see more of him, and he's a guy, puck skills aren't at the top of the list of things that he brings to the mix here. He's a big body that hopefully can be physical and veteran presence and all that kind of stuff. Are they going to move forward now and give Forbort and Friedman a little bit of a run as the third pair? And based on the early results, I would say that's probably the case. But where does that leave Erik Brannstrom? He's been a healthy scratch for 2 straight games now. And if Forbort's likely to be a mainstay, and I don't see him as a guy that's, if he's healthy, he's coming out of the lineup as a left shot. I think Brannstrom's going to have to be patient here. So
really, you don't see a world where they have a game like they did against St. Louis where puck transportation was such a problem, and he tries Brannstrom there?
I think Brannstrom will play for the Canucks again, but I don't know that he's going to jump the queue and get ahead of a guy like Derek Forbort. I thought last night, even the third pair, I thought they did a nice job of moving the puck quickly.
They did.
Moving the puck smartly. It's not about the 75-foot stretch pass all the time. It's the puck moves faster than players do, and so just getting it around the forecheck, getting it to the guy who's in the right spot on the sidewall to initiate the breakout. I thought they did a pretty nice job of that. Didn't get hemmed in their own zone. So, look, I don't have the answer for where it goes from here for Brannstrom. His play has slipped. Rick Tocchet alluded to that yesterday. I would agree with it. I look at the Tampa game and the 4-minute power play early where Hughes is out of the game. They look to Brannstrom. And he's not sitting because he didn't do anything on the power play there, but that felt like an opportunity missed for Erik Brannstrom to really step in and make something happen there to sort of turn some heads and think, all right, like this is a guy that we have to have in the lineup on a nightly basis. But in the short term, a 4-0 win over the Champs, I'd be hard-pressed to think that Rick Tocchet's going to change his lineup other than perhaps in goal on Saturday night.
Okay. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. We'll be listening to Rink White on the weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, guys. Have yourself a great weekend.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So, Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, our next guest, Jeff Merrick, his new show, The Sheet, noon Pacific, on his YouTube channel as part of the Nation Network. So you have choice. You can watch our show, you can watch Jeff's show, or you can watch one of them later.
That's right.
And
they are always available afterwards. Yes.
Watch me later. I'm not that interesting.
And
not consistently, anyway.
Boy, you came on today before we hit record, and you were pumping Blake's tires.
Dude, the tweets were the best. Oh, I'm sorry, like the salon tweet. And then
I'm sure I wasn't the first person to connect Vidal Sassoon to Max Sasson, but whatever.
Okay, can
No,
you
but
share for the class, the rest of the class?
Go ahead, Blake. This is your masterpiece.
On
the one hand, it did make me feel a little bit old, but didn't matter. Made me giggle inside.
Oh, I think the only people that liked those tweets were 45 plus for sure. I was just connecting Vidal Sassoon and Max Sasson, and I had a Famke Janssen gif of her with
the feather.
A hair shimmy.
Over the shoulder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was good. And then what was the other one about skating like Quinn Hughes? If you could have any sort of superpower,
if I could choose any
that one?
superpower, I would either fly, shoot lasers from my eyes, or skate like Quinn Hughes. I'm not sure which.
Yeah,
that's after he was shaking. He was shaking, 4 checks off last night, like just.
But like, did he even need like a warm towel last night? Like only 22 minutes? Like that's it.
I know.
I'm not used to that.
I know.
Wow, what a slacker Quinn Hughes was last night.
That's so easy.
You guys need a room here at the Wall Center.
American
Mutual Admiration Society.
American Price going forward.
Well, it is.
So, what do you think all happened here with JT Miller, Jeff?
I mean, I'm not in the room. I'm not privy to it. JT Miller is an intense guy, right? Like I'm always of a couple of minds when I see the Game 7 guys. And we've seen situations before where like some players like a room that's run really hot, others don't. And sometimes teams just sort of fall in the middle. Again, I'm not there. You guys are a lot closer to it than I am. I just wonder if, because we've seen plenty of players that want the entire team to sort of rise to their level of expectation and consistency, and essentially like, run hot, like everything is Game 7, like we're here and we're committed. Sometimes not everybody's on the same page. Again, this is from like thousands of miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Ontario guys going to tell you what's going on with JT Miller.
No, but I think it's fair to say JT runs the room. That's been the case since Bo Horvat was shipped out. And I think it's also fair to say that he runs the room hot because that's his personality. We had heard even... Look, it's no secret here. Him and Elias Paterson don't really see eye to eye on a lot of things. They've both said we're completely different personalities. Elias is a, quiet, more thoughtful, more sensitive sort of soul. And JT says a lot of things, and a lot of things loud, and a lot of things with and a lot of things obnoxiously. And it's just a much different vibe from each corner of the center iceman stalls.
And listen, my immediate thoughts go to the Winnipeg Jets, with the relationship with Blake Wheeler, and how, playing the role of Wheeler might be JT Miller, and playing the role of Paterson maybe Patrick Laine. Not exactly a secret that, Laine has a certain vibe about him and a certain way that he carries himself. And, Blake Wheeler has that intense level of expectation day in and day out that coaches may love and some other teammates may love, but not everybody does. Was, Patrick Laine, the victim of that? I wouldn't be the first to suggest it. I don't think that there's one, I don't know if there's one very specific way to win a championship or be a successful team. I think it takes a mix of a lot of personalities. I think that it would be folly for us to think that, all 23 guys are getting along. Like, long gone are the days of the early 70s Boston Bruins when the rule was, after every practice or every game, everybody had to go out together as a team for at least one beer. Like, those days are gone. Now it's 23 guys, 23 phones, 23 Ubers. It's a lot different now. But I don't know that there's necessarily one specific way to run a room, and I think personalities can often clash. And
well, we have precedent. We have precedent. This team can have success with this current makeup. I mean, there's been new guys brought in. I don't think they're necessarily the quote unquote problems.
The Winnipeg team went to the West Final against Vegas,
right? Like, and this team was a win away, 2 kicks at the can to go to the West Final themselves. So we have precedent to show that this team chemistry can work to a large degree, at the very least.
Yeah. I kind of, it's interesting. I was talking to someone the other day about getting along with teammates, getting along with coaches. And you guys recall the old saying about Scotty Bowman, right? 364 days of the year, everybody hated Scotty. And on day 365, they all got their rings.
Yeah.
So like, there's not specifically one way. And just because people don't get along, I've always maintained you don't have to like someone to be able to do business with them. Like that is a true, and the really successful people in business, whether it's, the financial industry, whether it's the hockey industry, the successful ones are able to do business with people that they don't get along with and people that they don't like. I think that's a skill. Some people have it, some people don't. Like if you can look at a teammate and say like, I really don't like them, but for the good of the team here, we have to find a way to get along. I think that's how successful teams are made. Because there's not going to be 23 guys, that are all cool with each other. Not anymore. No chance.
Hey, basketball teams have 12 guys, and we have like Kobe and Shaq and the Bulls, and they couldn't get 12 guys on the same page.
Jeff just described my last 13 years.
Yeah. Okay, JT.
Kidding.
Over to you,
hot, Blake. A little warm in here. You need
Blake
the puffy
runs
coat.
the room hot, man.
You need the puffy coat.
He spent the first 5 minutes running you down, Blake. Sorry you had to find out like this.
I did
No
not.
surprise. No surprise.
Yeah. So, well, what did you make of JT last night? And what do you make of this? What do you make of this?
Honestly, the whole team was great. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to come on with scarce price today. What am I going to say? Like, can I find any sort of like fly paper? Say, like at the end of it, the only question was that great or really great? If you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, like from the get-go, everything clicked. Like, I haven't watched all the Vancouver Canucks games this season. You guys have, but that's the best I've ever seen the Vancouver Canucks.
That is the best. It's arguably their best win. Yeah, no, that's fair, Jeff. Mm-hmm.
I mean, could
well, especially given the quality of opponent, right?
Like, against the defending Stanley Cup champions, who and listen, they like you guys saw, like, they tried to bully the Vancouver Canucks. Florida Panthers tried to bully everybody. They are the closest thing to the Broad Street bullies. Now we hear about the Panther flu and Florida's on the schedule. My shoulders, I'm not like we hear things like this now. And they tried to bully the Vancouver Canucks and they didn't, and everything clicked together. Lankinen was great. Miller was great. The fourth line was outstanding. Quinn Hughes, this is a recording. He was excellent. Carson Soucy had a really nice goal. Like, everything worked yesterday for the Vancouver Canucks. And, JT Miller was the focal point of all of it, and a nice touch that he got the first star out of the whole thing.
Could this go any better for the Canucks in goal right now? For a sport that still gets referred to as goalie right now, I mean, could it be any better for a soft re-entry for Thatcher Demko, who was great in his debut, all things considered? But to have Lankinen as the fallback of hey, no rush. We don't need Thatcher to be A1 every single night or play every single night. I mean, that part of it, and considering how important a position it is, go look at the Colorado Avalanche and others. Sure. I mean, that part of this team is working out just perfectly, isn't it?
Yeah, that's been ideal. I mean, it's the hardest position to really get your thumb on. And I mean, every Friday we have Brian Burke on the sheet, and I've known Berkey forever. Most of the time we've gotten along. There was a few years there where bluntly we didn't talk, but Brian and I have basically always been on the same page. And he would always tell me, and he still does to this day, he said, I have no idea why it's the general managers that vote on the Vezina. He said, that's the one position we always screw up. The history of general managers is screwing up the goal and making bad decisions and bad picks, and we are awful.
Jeff, listen to coaches talk. Head coaches shouldn't vote on it either. Anytime you hear a head coach talk about it, you're like, I don't know what. I'll talk to my guys.
But you know what the frustrating thing about that is the goaltender and the head coach are more directly linked than any other position on the ice.
Yeah.
You got a bad goalie. Guess who's going to pay for it? It's the guy behind the bench. But they've gotten themselves into a great situation here. And listen, Lankinen had his go around with Chicago, with Nashville as well, and has found a great spot right now where it's all working for the Vancouver Canucks. We always talk about goaltenders hitting the stride at different times of their career. It's happening right now, big time for Kevin Lankinen. And how many times have we heard goaltenders, kind of be shy about, well, unless I feel perfect, I don't want to get on the ice. I'm not saying that Thatcher Demko is that guy, but it does give you the luxury that if Demko isn't 100% feeling it that day, it's okay. It's not
It's
as
okay.
if guy is falling. It's all right. It's like, okay, so we got to go to Lankinen. Okay, he just threw a bagel at the defending Stanley Cup champions. We're good here.
What now that Miller's back, now that Demko's back, what do you think the Canucks' upside is, Jeff?
I still want to see another defenseman that can move the puck. You know, I still want to see one more D that can shuttle the puck out of the zone. I know that's not going to be the easiest thing to find, but we all know about Jim Rutherford's reputation and Patrick Allvin as well as, you know, shaking the bushes and getting someone to fall out here. I think, like I've always maintained, as long as they're healthy, the Vancouver Canucks, you guys know this, they have a superstar at all key positions. Not to diminish the wing here, but they have elite players at center. They have one of, if not the best defenseman in the NHL. And when Thatcher Demko is healthy, you have a top 3, maybe top 5 goaltender in the league. Like at those power positions where you win games and win divisions and conferences and championships, provided everyone stays healthy, they have that all set. Again, I'd still like to see a little more mobility on the back end. Although last night, man, the pairs worked out great and they played really well. I don't know you're going to see that sustained over the course of the remainder of the schedule. But against the defending Stanley Cup champions, it was nice to see. I still want to see one more mover back there. But right now, provided everybody stays healthy, this is a team that can do some significant damage, and they have some experience to draw on from last season as well and playoffs.
Okay, so let me follow that up and ask you this then.
Right.
They get that guy, theoretically. Does that make them tier 1 cup contender, or does that make them dark horse cup contender? Like they're getting that guy to
Dark
become
horse.
what?
Still dark. Still dark horse for me. I mean, you're it's funny too, though. I mean, when you look around, and I was having this conversation with someone this morning. It's like, who do you think is going to win? Just frivolously, you guys have had this. So who's going to win the Stanley Cup this year? My default is still the Florida Panthers. My default is still, I can see that team once again flipping the switch and bullying their way to another Stanley Cup, provided everybody stays healthy. I can see that. But you look around the NHL, like, how do we feel about Winnipeg? How do we feel about Minnesota? Both are playing great. We know what's happened with Winnipeg before in the playoffs, and we know it's tough to compete with a $14 million black hole of salary cap if you're the Minnesota Wild. At what point are we going to start to see the Dallas Stars really turn things on here and have them turn a significant corner and be the team that we think they can be? Heck, they lost to Nashville last night. Let me repeat that. They lost to Nashville last night. Vegas is good. I'm still not 100% sold on the Los Angeles Kings. Edmonton doesn't hit their stride in this incarnation of the Edmonton Oilers until January. So I'll still put them in that second tier of cup contender. But then I look around the Western Conference, and part of me is saying, what's my hesitation? You know, it's not like, and we'll see what happens with Colorado with the new net mining situation. They should be in cup consideration, but I mean, there's no one really, maybe Vegas for me, that's really like that Florida Panthers of the West. We look at them and you say, yeah, that's a team that's going to come out of the conference here.
Jeff, we've heard this bandied about.
It's a wide field, I think.
We've heard this bandied about that there is no elite team. Like even the teams that are running away with Florida, it, the Capitals and the Devils, this is their first time being at the top of the standings in a long while. Like, do you believe in it? Do you believe in the Jets and Wild? Like, again, these are
Capitals.
Yeah, like, is there an elite team?
Florida Panthers are still an elite team to me.
Okay,
but that's based on reputation, right? Like, that's based on the fact they are the Cup champs, rather than what we're seeing.
But the thing is, they haven't really profoundly changed the team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not one area you look at and you say, well, that's where teams are going to exploit. Like, sure, like at the end of every season, successful. I mean, we saw this, you know, starting with the Blackhawks and the Kings, et cetera, Penguins. Like, you win championships and you lose players, and that's naturally going to happen. But show me where the Florida Panthers have taken a significant step back. I don't see it. Now, I don't think the Florida Panthers are going to have foot on the gas for the entire 82. But I do know that there's about nobody in the Eastern Conference that wants to face off against the Florida Panthers in the opening round. Nobody wants to touch these guys. Provided they, again, the wild card is, of course, health. Provided they stay healthy, I think if I'm going to pick one elite team in the NHL, it's still Florida.
You think they could overcome the loss of Ryan Lomberg then? All right.
So I was just going to point out they're seventh.
I do like the Lamborghini, but I don't know that I like him as a Stanley Cup difference.
Who doesn't? He's a great character in the league right now.
And I fully agree that they know how to win, and so they're a bit like the 2010 to 2012 Canucks that you don't really need to examine the regular season too much because they can do it in the playoffs. But they are 7th in the league right now. They are 9th in goal differential. Like, they're a great team, but are they elite this season? I mean,
I'm glad. Hang on, I'm glad you brought up Vancouver of that era. And you can make the argument, too, that the Toronto Maple Leafs fall into this category as well. And that is, there are no answers in the regular season for these teams. Like, the best example is that Vancouver Canucks era that you talked about. Regular season, not saying it's meaningless, but there's no answers. We're not going to learn anything new. Like, you're not going to learn anything new about the Florida Panthers in the regular season. All the answers, again, are in the playoffs. Maple Leafs are the exact same way. Like, there are just some teams at the beginning of the year, you just know they're saying to themselves, let's just get the regular season over with.
Yeah.
Like, we just need to get it over with. And that's Florida, that's Toronto.
And the flip side, like, Washington is winning 75% of their points, Minnesota 72, Vegas 71. That is elite, but I think we can all
there's question marks along with
that's it.
Yeah.
I think we all have reason for skepticism on those marks through a third of the season.
That's my point. Yeah, exactly.
And we'll see how they do over the 82 grind. And even then, we have a history of unbelievable President's Trophy runaway winners losing in round one, Boston and Tampa.
Yes.
So,
yes. Although again, like, how much? I mean, so much on history sort of, it can sometimes hinge on one shot. I keep coming back to it. If Bobrovsky doesn't make that pad save in the dying seconds of that game against the Boston Bruins in the opening round, what happens to the Florida Panthers and what happens to the Boston Bruins? Both, how different are the fates of both those squads? Because you could have made I think the argument, and rightfully so, that Boston could have won the Stanley Cup that year.
Yep. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Just that one pad save. Oh.
Last week, you told us about general managers who may hold off till after the Four Nations to make their acquisitions because they want to make sure that guys are healthy.
Yep.
This week, I encountered, and I forget who had it, some of the sellers want to unload, particularly their rentals before the Four Nations in case they get injured. So Jeff, this will be an interesting tug of war here.
We talked about the warp and weft of it. Like, we want to get rid of our guys like before they get injured at the Four Nations because we talked about who did we talk? We talked about Hasek, right? We used the Hasek example and John Tavares.
The quintessential, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, but it takes two, right? Like, yes, teams want to unload before the Four Nations in case their players get injured, but the acquiring teams as well might be a little bit gun shy until the example that I keep using are the Dallas Stars, who we know are going to be out there, as I put in the blog this week, big game hunting. Like, if Jake Ottinger gets into this tournament and gets injured, how much does that recalibrate everything about the Dallas Stars? Because internally they've made the decision, this is go for it year. They are going for it. They have first round picks that they can use. They have I don't think it's we saw Liam Bixel yesterday, and it's a beautiful goal that he scored, albeit in a losing cause, but it's going to be really hard to hang on to him. It's going to be hard to hang on to Maverick Bourque if you're going to go for it the way that we suspect Dallas is. But how much do you recalibrate if Ottinger gets hurt? And how much, if you're Jim Nill, do you want to wait until the Four Nations is over before pulling the trigger on all of these deals? Like, I understand both sides of it. Like, the teams that have the assets want to get rid of them in case before they get hurt, and the acquiring teams are like, talk to me after the tournament.
And here's the thing, Jeff. What I hear when I consider that dynamic is maybe there's a deal to be had. Maybe you get a good rental at a lower cost if you're willing to take him before the Four Nations.
Take
with
that gamble.
a nervous general man. Exactly. Maybe he's nicked a little. That.
Watching the games and clutching your pearls, hoping.
Right, exactly.
Nothing happens.
Lastly, Bog meeting this week. It seems pretty sure we're going to an 84-game schedule. Even the players apparently are okay with that. LTIR in the playoffs, tax equalization on jurisdictions. What do you think?
That one's going to be a tough one. But I can
Tax or LTIR in the playoffs?
I think both of them,
or both.
I can see, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that I think we need to consider too is like this is something that needs to be negotiated with this in the new CBA. And as much as we sometimes look at this and say, hey, Patrick Kane, Mark Stone, Nikita Kucherov, and I think we all this year have our eyes on Tyler Seguin and how that's going to play itself out with the Dallas Stars. We shall see. This is something that the minute the ink was dry on the salary cap, everybody's tried to look for loopholes or ways around it or try to massage it to their benefit. Chicago was the first one with this situation with Patrick Kane. And they brought in Antoine Vermette, et cetera, and they then ended up winning a Stanley Cup because they had that quote unquote extra cap space. The thing that you need to consider as well, too, from the Players Association's point of view, one of the things, like if you say like, okay, you need to be cap compliant. If you don't play, one game before the playoffs, you can't play in the playoffs. They will be very sensitive to, you can't punish a player for being injured, right? How many times you heard that you can't, let a player injure himself out of the lineup? Let's say like legitimately someone can't come back until game 4 of the opening round. I know we all look at this stuff kind of sideways. I just don't think that the issue is as cut and dry as we want to think about it. I guess you could have sort of floating day of, you have to be cap compliant. Maybe we go that direction. 84 games doesn't surprise me. I'm actually, to be honest with you, like I'm actually kind of surprised that it took so long to get here. The minute the NHL Players Association agreed to salary linkage, the idea of going backwards with games was off the books. But the idea of adding games to get more hockey-related revenue in the system was very much part of the conversation. So part of me says, 2024, 25, I'm kind of surprised it took us this long to get here.
Marvelous stuff, my friend. Really enjoying your show.
Thanks, man.
Couple weeks in. Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having me on this week, and we will catch up next
you're
Friday,
great.
Jeff.
Blake, you're on the hook next.
It's okay. I'll be here.
I mean, his tweets
Keep the hot
alone,
tweets coming. Keep
Jeff,
the hot tweets
exactly.
coming. Let's go. Got a standard now. We're running your Twitter hot, bud.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, boys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where extend your game night, make it a staycation, downtown Vancouver. Book the Harrison Price exclusive right here at the Wall, 604-331-1000. Tell them we sent you based on availability. Some blackout dates apply. Going to do some great clips to the people we go in a moment, but first the gigantic news today from Vancouver Whitecaps FC that the ownership group of Greg Kerfoot, Jeff Mallett, Steve Nash, and Steve Luzo have initiated the process of a sale. And I'll start by saying good on them for being upfront with this.
Right.
This is a sensitive matter, and a lot of ownership groups would not have dealt with this with the same transparency. It's funny, I was speaking to someone earlier this week who said I was hearing rumblings about a Whitecap sale and maybe even relocation. Here's the quote in the statement from majority owner Greg Kerfoot. Our group has been committed to transforming our local soccer club into a significant contributor to the community. It is gratifying to see how meaningful the Whitecaps have become to so many and to have been able to contribute to the growth of a vibrant and thriving soccer community in Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, British Columbia, and beyond. The passionate MLS supporters, academy development teams, and players, the thousands of kids who attend camps, and the groups we support in nurturing the game in so many places have all proven our belief in Vancouver as a first-class soccer market. The future of the Whitecaps is bright. The statement says this comes after careful consideration of the club's journey and reflection on what it is required to ensure its continued growth and success. Commissioner Don Garber of MLS is also quoted in the statement. The Whitecaps would not be where they are today without the vision and commitment of this exceptional ownership group. The Whitecaps are a terrific club and a world-class city. On behalf of everyone in Major League Soccer, I want to thank them for their tremendous contribution. I look forward to working with them to identify new ownership for the club. They have retained Goldman Sachs, the New York investment bank, to advise on the sale.
A lot of that stuff's boilerplate. The one thing I will circle is Don Garber saying this is a world-class city. Make no bones.
Didn't say that when he was in our studio a number of years ago.
True.
Looked out the window and said, "Does it rain here every day? I could never live here."
But being an Olympic city, being a World Cup city, it would seem folly to pull out of a World Cup and Olympic city. But going back a couple months ago, I did hear scuttlebutt about a risk of relocation for this club. And now at that point, it wasn't attached to any particular news. Now with this, I look back on that scuttlebutt and I think, oof, gosh. The brass tacks of this is, folks, the Vancouver Canucks do not own a stadium. They are merely a franchise.
Caps.
What did I say? Canucks? The Whitecaps do not own their stadium.
They don't even own their training facility.
It is in collaboration with the national team and UBC out there as well. So all they're selling is the franchise right. It's a heck of a lot easier to port that. You don't have real estate to sell, and you don't have that as an asset either. So in terms of assets or MLS teams to buy, it'll be amongst the cheapest, not because it's in this northern outpost, because there's nothing really attached to it.
Yeah.
It's just the team.
Yeah. The Caps are worth $420 million, according to Forbes. That puts them 28th out of 29 MLS franchises, more valuable than only the Colorado Rapids. I got a strange feeling when Steve Nash showed up towards the end of the year after so many years of being away from the club with his brother Martin.
Clearly some meetings were had.
You would think.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that I think we need to understand. And look, this ownership group hasn't identified this. I'm not sure they will ever get into the details of how this day came about. But Steve Nash had basically sweat equity for his ownership stake here. Be the ambassador, be the celebrity, everything that you are in British Columbia. Bring some shine to the club in the early days.
He did not sweat a bead.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't believe Steve has any real money in the team. And of course, these guys got the team from MLS when it was a much daintier league. They got it for $40 million. It's now worth 10 times that. So if any of the partners, whether it was Steve Nash, Steve Lusso, Jeff Mallett, said, "Guys, I want out," suddenly the rest of them have to finance a really, really big transaction to get that guy out, buy up his share. And I can understand how even rich guys would look at that, particularly since how sound is the MLS business model going forward? Like Apple has been when you watch the games, Apple has been an extraordinary addition. The picture, not to toot his horn here, but everything about the MLS broadcast is superior to basic cable. Said it.
Are people going there?
It's distributed as basic cable. There are many in the business world who will look at you and MLS expanded very, very fast. This could be a house of cards. So, even if somebody didn't want out, if they just together came to the decision, guys, I'm not sure it's ever going to be more valuable than it is today, or at least I'm not willing to assume the risk of what's to come down the road in MLS. I can understand that too. Then, look, Vancouver is the least strategic market for MLS. You can tell that because of when the games are on. We've had the discussion about 7:30 Saturday night games for the Whitecaps. Not ideal. People would like them earlier. But for MLS and Apple, they need a game at the end of the night, and Vancouver will suffice. They want more of the primetime windows for other teams. So Vegas is without an MLS team. Phoenix is without an MLS team. San Antonio is without an MLS team, although there's already 3 in Texas.
Toronto doesn't have. Oh no, they do.
So it would be a pretty simple relocation from the standpoint of conference alignment going forward.
It doesn't jive that they would be the team to move given attendance issues elsewhere. Like attendance
They're
wise,
7th in MLS attendance.
Attendance wise, they do just fine. They're working with the bad dollar, unfortunately. So all the revenue that comes in from attendance, whether it's paid or otherwise, you can argue about the paid attendance.
60 cents on the US dollar, but
yeah. So but like Montreal plays out of a much smaller stadium. But
does Joey own does Saputo own the stadium?
It's a great question. I assume they do, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So, and there's American markets that are more tenuous as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're coming from the 30th position here and it just makes sense. Like that's certainly not the case. Mm-hmm. There is an asset here. The question is it a shining asset that's going to attract a lot of suitors? Yeah. I'm not pessimistic, folks. I'm not saying it's going to happen that they're going to move. No, but it's also ignorant to think that it's going to be a long list and you're going to be fending off the suitors.
Yeah, you're
not. So it's
because as a year in, year out business, I'm not sure it's profitable.
Right now,
especially when you don't control the stadium revenues. Incidentally, Saputo does own the stadium.
Yeah.
Saputo Inc. owns the stadium there.
So let's look at the local options here. We'll start with Francesco Aquilini and company.
Mm-hmm.
Possible.
Had interest before, tried to strike a deal with Kerfoot at one point. In fact, at one point, I think was looking at a competing bid for an MLS expansion franchise.
Now, they own other money. I can't imagine the NLL team makes money. Mm-hmm. They know what that looks like, and it can be a write-off in some regards and maybe complement the Canucks to some degree. It's possible. I would be surprised because, again, there's no asset attached to it, and they can't play inside Rogers Arena.
But there would be some synergies, and it further expands your sports and entertainment empire here in Vancouver and British Columbia.
That maybe if you wanted to sell in the future, you're selling this massive entity. Possible. Amar Dolman,
don't think so.
Not in the same category exactly in terms of liquidity, and they've just bought a bunch of companies.
Well,
bought one for $250 million, bought another one for $100 million. So he's in.
And I would have to talk, but for me, Amar Doman is a through and through football fan.
Yeah,
that's why he bought the BC.
It was a passion.
He loves football.
Yeah. So
I don't know how he feels about soccer.
Not a likely candidate. And any other sports ownership locally, maybe the one kind of interest, and again, this is not reporting. I'm just connecting dots here. One of former Vancouver-based professional soccer player Rob Friend is part of the Vancouver FC ownership group, and they actually own that stadium building company that does the pseudo-temporary stadiums that theoretically, if you found a plot of land cheap-ish, there's nothing cheap in the Lower Mainland, but if you found cheap-ish land, you could build a cheap-ish stadium for 20,000 fans and then move into BC Place for select games potentially. So, I can manufacture that as a great rumor, but it's just that I'm just making it up. It's just out of my back pocket. And anybody else would be dropped out of the sky. If you're thinking, hey, how about Ryan Reynolds?
I was thinking Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan
Reynolds, baby.
Ryan Reynolds knows a lot of well-heeled people. Hell, he was briefly involved in the pursuit of the Ottawa Senators. So he himself is unlikely to be the owner, but could he come forward with a conglomerate? Yes, potentially. But just for scale, he and Rob McElhenney bought Wrexham FC. This is projected to be $400 million. Wrexham FC was purchased for $2.5 million. 2.5.
It's funny because back in the day, and I covered a lot of sports franchise sales in the NHL, in the CFL. Your lists were longer simply because franchise values had not exploded.
Right.
I can remember when the Aquilinis bought the Canucks. I can remember having a conversation with Rick Dollywall, and Rick said to me, man, not a lot of people in town actually even know who these guys are. And they were lurking with hundreds of millions and, bought the Canucks for hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it was 300 and some. And it was obviously a spectacular business move given what the Canucks are worth now. But the point is that you could have money that wasn't really all that noteworthy in the community and buy a team back then. $420 million. There's not a lot of people who can afford that. So you've already shrunk the list. Yeah, you can get consortiums to come together. That is still a model, but more often than not now, it's guys like Steve Ballmer with that sort of money who drop in and buy teams. Steve Cohen with the Mets, David Tepper with the Carolina Panthers, just like these more money than God type people. So, yeah, this is not the Christmas present that Caps supporters were hoping for. I know there's been a lot of criticism over the years about Kerfoot and Mallet and not investing in the product or not being willing to go out and buy the expensive DPs and all of that. But they were a local, well-heeled ownership group, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad when you're looking for stewards.
And they are not on the low end of salary expenditures right now.
They're mid-table now. Yeah. They're mid-table.
And which for this market is what you should really expect, and you should expect to try to overachieve with the money that you send. I mean, there might be somebody that comes out of the woodwork and they will be a hero for the fan base that's here, and maybe they have.
And BC does have a lot of rich people, so there might be a soccer fan there amongst the billionaire crowd or the centimillionaire crowd who, in conjunction with a partner or two, says, "Yeah, let's do this." But there are a lot of things when you look at the Whitecaps, I think, especially the Whitecaps operating in Vancouver, that would dissuade people, because I'm not sure how you get your $420 million back. You're certainly not going to do that with operational profits year over year, and so you would be betting on franchise value soaring even from here in what is a very uncertain media universe, Blake. You mentioned the Canadian dollar as well, which is another factor in this. This is going to be an interesting one. Okay, let's go to the people, brought to you by Great Clips. And we got some poll question comments I want to get to, but first...
old school ones, and this one's way out of left field from Basketball Phil. Hot take, Arch Manning transfers to Chapel Hill to play for the Hoodie.
Yeah, if you don't know Arch Manning, he is the nephew of Peyton and Eli, the grandson of Archie. He has been the backup quarterback at the University of Texas.
What's the third brother's name? It's his son, right?
It's Cooper.
Cooper.
Yeah, it's Cooper's son. And Cooper was a football player too, but had a terrible injury condition that ended his career in the collegiate.
Same Manning personality though. He was briefly on the Manning cast and stuff like that.
Oh, Cooper's terrific. Yeah, he's closer to Peyton than he is Eli in terms of personality. Yeah. Although Eli has come out of his shell.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially like oh, come on, Pay. So Arch Manning is a terrific young quarterback prospect. He did some great things for Texas when he came in this year. He's kind of like his granddad in that he's a better runner than his two uncles. Like he's a mobile quarterback. I could see it. Transfers happen all the time. Texas has an established quarterback there. He may even come back next year. So, yeah, I could see it.
JC, I don't think Rutherford and Alvin can approach Demko's contract status the same way they have Boeser. Boeser is replaceable at the same cap, so he can sign elsewhere with another team without much penalty. Demko's on a value contract. If they're worried about Demko's health, how can they not be? They are far better off trading him in the offseason and re-signing Lankinen at the same salary.
Yep. No, I think that's fair. And, if they wanted to go into a world where they are not spending gads of money on goaltending and trying to get by with lesser cost, with two different options, so to speak, that's a possibility here. Absolutely.
And last one from AB. I'm re-upping this. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well done. This is honest, AB.
Yeah.
Okay. Fire away.
Tell me I'm wrong. The bullishness in the Canucks fan base is misplaced, and Blake's assessment of the fans' cautious approach is more accurate. As for me, my hot take is the Canucks just missed the playoffs with regression from Boeser, Miller, and Hughes, who can't be expected to be injury-free 2 years in a row. This is from September the 3rd. Honest AB wants a pat on the back.
Wow. Boeser's been hurt Miller's left the team for 10 games. Hughes is playing through something. On that score, I'll tell him he's right.
It's going to go up and down. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like watching the market here, Honest TV. No back pats yet.
Poll question results from yesterday. Have you been entertained by the Canucks this year? And believe it or not, this the percentages changed here during the game last night. Periodically won the day with 52%. Yes got 29%. No got 19%. David, watching Quinn Hughes play the game at a different level than everyone else is pretty entertaining. Fair shout, David. If you want to narrow the question to, I get to watch the best defenseman in the world 82 times, completely understand. Chris, hard no. I've been frustrated as all hell, and the empty seats are starting to look like they agree with me. I've never turned off this many games this early. Different, Chris. Only Sherwood and Juleson hit. Not enough FU in their games. They're missing the cocky swagger they had last year, a.k.a. Zadorov. Games are mostly, but hardly, must-see TV. And then Matthew's hairline says, what's entertaining about old school dump and chase hockey? Yes, we had that discussion this week.
And they looked a little bit different last night. When it becomes a pattern, then you will start to put this one down. But
I hear Chris's shout that the swag isn't quite there.
No.
Zadorov brought the swag. And I also, when Sherwood hits that many people in one game, you do sort of wonder, like, why isn't anybody else hitting? It is just so extreme. He distinguishes himself from the group.
Both from the players and the fan standpoint. And they're not quite at the wake me when the playoffs come, but I think fans are waiting for games of import. And I think there's going to be a ramp up from the fans' attitude towards this team. And maybe this will be part of what the players are thinking too, that when we can see the playoffs, when it's February and March and we know that everything matters more, maybe that's where that swagger comes back, and maybe that's where fan excitement also comes back a little bit.
With more than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada, Great Clips is the world's largest hair salon brand and official hair salon of the National Hockey League. Sales salons are locally owned, operated, open 7 days a week. Your time is valuable. Use the Great Clips check-in app. See the wait time, check in on your phone, and get a haircut when you want. For more information, check out greatclips.com. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Ugly duckling Thursday nighter in a monsoon in San Francisco. The Rams win it 12-6. Brock Purdy, bad pick late in this game. And so your Seattle Seahawks have to get a win Sunday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers to maintain their lead atop the NFC West. In fact, and Mike, I think you got the graphic there. It's another one of these wide swings in playoff probability games. The Seahawks win. They're 82% to make the playoffs. With a loss, they're a 50-50 coin flip. Blake, the Rams up their playoff probabilities to 54% with the win. They would have been just 23%.
Wow.
With a loss. And then there was the odd sight of Devondre Campbell, San Francisco linebacker, former Atlanta linebacker, played in that Super Bowl they blew, refusing to go into the game in the third quarter. 49ers tight end George Kittle, quote, I've never been around anybody that's ever done that, and I hope I'm never around anyone that does that again. There were a couple of 49ers in that losing locker room who expressed that sort of opinion. I just hope everything's okay with the young man. That is very rare to see a guy up and just leave the field like that. You may remember back several years ago, Vontae Davis, who had a terrific career as a corner with Indianapolis, mostly, retired at halftime of the Bills game in week 2. Remember, he just said, basically, I'm done here. I don't have it in me anymore. I hope it's as benign as that for Devondre Campbell and not something more serious. Then I wanted to share this. I follow Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News. He used to be the Rangers beat guy. We used to see Pat on press row. We visited with him when we went to New York that one year. Like a lot of young U.S. reporters, you start in hockey, you work your way up. So he's been on the Giants beat for a number of years now. Listen to this. How bad are the New York Giants? They had a red zone period of practice today. Outside, 30 degrees, 18-mile-per-hour winds. The offense went 0 for 17 on passes. They went 0 for 4 versus air when there were no defenders on the field. They went 0 for 13 when there were defenders on the field. Combo of drops, overthrows, defensive plays, and 2 catches out of bounds. They may have drawn 1 pass interference penalty in the 18 snaps. Giants and Ravens Sunday, everybody. Get excited.
Maybe football's not their sport. Maybe they're a hockey team. They don't even know it.
Well, there used to be the New York Baseball Giants, right?
That's true.
Lastly, Google homework here, folks. Although Mike's got this one too. He can put it on the screen. Have you seen the RBC Canadian Open logo redesign? Did you miss this?
Yeah, I missed it.
They are commemorating Nick Taylor's memorable putt 2 years ago.
The club drop is now immortalized.
Well, the club throw.
Yeah.
It's kind of between a throw and a drop.
Yeah.
Anyways, Nick Taylor's silhouette, including the airborne club, now form the I in Canadian Open as we celebrate
cool.
a Canadian Open winner. A Canadian winner of the Canadian Open. You may recall Pat Fletcher way back. We used to always cite how long it had been since Pat Fletcher won.
And people might think that's weird that it's forever one player you think of one. But I mean, the NBA logo, that's there's precedent there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the MLB logo is supposed to be somebody too, isn't it?
Of course, he was the first Canadian winner of the Canadian Open since 1954. Pat Fletcher at Point Grey. Well, the NBA logo is Jerry West.
No, MLB logo. MLB.
Oh, really?
I think it is supposed to be somebody. Killebrew? I don't know. I forget who it was. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. Have a couple here. I said the Hawks game on the 23rd of December. It's the 22nd against Minnesota. And I said JT Miller missed 9 games. He missed 10.
There was also
anything to self-report.
Steve wanted to clarify the toe the line versus toe the line. Matt uses it to describe a situation where someone comes close to but does not go beyond a
correct
transgression. Blake uses it to describe a situation where a person is pulling on the same rope as everybody else.
Okay.
He often says toe the company line.
Right. Okay.
But both
are accurate. Yes. Made us smarter, Steve. Thank you for that. And thanks for joining us, connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's Insta. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. Please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about and keep it local. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sakaris and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.